So, hello everyone. Here is Tatiana Bazzichelli, the director of the Disruption Network Club, and I'm very glad to thank all the audience and our great speakers for our 10 years anniversary. This is a very important moment for us because it's exactly 10 years ago that we started this program. And I am incredibly pleased to celebrate these special events with people that are courageous, that are doing an important work. They are extraordinary researchers, whistleblowers, artists, activists, and tech experts. So thank you very much for being with us at the Disruption Lab. As usual, we connect from the Kunstquartier Bethanien in Berlin. And we are also on streaming, so we will record and stream the whole events. And what we are doing in these 2 days is to connect whistleblowers, researchers, investigative journalists, artists, and more. And since 10 years, we are working on the discourse of exposing systems of power and injustice. And especially in these 2 days, we are doing it by discussing the discourse of AI and warfare. So first of all, I would like to give a big thanks to my team, Jonas Franchi, that is the creative producer, Max Grigruch, the project manager, Agnese Trocchi, the digital communication manager, Mel Luna, the production and communication assistant. So I really ask you all to give a big applause to them. The conference of these next 2 days is called Investigating the Killcloud, Information Warfare, Autonomous Weapon and AI. And I've been also having the pleasure to cooperate with Jutta Weber from Paderborn University, and in particular through the project Swarm Technologies, Control and Autonomy in Complex Weapon Systems. So tomorrow also Jutta is going to moderate a panel, and we will hear more from her. And we have been working for many months in investigating the impact of AI and data-driven technology on the wars of today and tomorrow. And this comes also from a great history of the Disruption Network Lab, because in March 2022, as many of you might remember, we had another great conference that was called the Killcloud. And for that, I also want to give a special thanks to Lisa Ling and Sean Westmoreland, because they are the people that came out with this idea, of this concept of the Killcloud. I mean, not with the idea of the Killcloud, but with the concept of it. And we will happily try to dismantle the Killcloud in these days. But so also to quote Lisa and Sean, and probably we will discuss more with Lisa today, the Killcloud is the rapidly growing network infrastructure of global reach with the primary intent of dominating every spectrum of warfare, including space, cyberspace, and the electromagnetic spectrum itself. And following this kind of also very dark imaginary, after the Killcloud conference, also thanks to the impulse of Lisa Ling and Khalil Diwan, that is here as well, we decided to found the Disruption Network Institute. That is a think tank that has been working now for 15 months. We started at the date of the 11th of September 2023, also to give it a kind of symbolic start. And what we are doing, what we have been doing there with our 4 fellows, is to investigate the Killcloud, specifically of how AI and other technology are impacting warfare and human rights, and also how our everyday digital life are connected to it. And I really want to thank as well our 4 fellows. We just published their papers yesterday. They are online on the Disruption Institute website. And specifically, a big thanks to the director of Tech Inquiry, Jack Paulson, that did also a 15-month research unveiling the ties between tech companies, government, and weapon industries. Also, the drone whistleblower Lisa Ling, that investigated if can the kill cloud be governed, and also about the accountability of it. The whistleblower advocate Naomi Colvin, that worked on ethical but lethal autonomous weapons and AI safety, and Joanna Moll, that is a great artist and a professor that has been also here at the Disruption Lab several times. She worked on how internet ads and tracking connect us all to the kill cloud. And later today, she will also do a great performance here, because her work has been also artistic based, so her research combined together with her performance, and before also with workshops that we did with students at her university. And then later in the day, we will have a keynote with the 4 fellows of the Disruption Network Institute that will explain all the topics of their research, and we will go deeper into the discourse of AI warfare, of the technological aspect around it. And now I would like to thank our funders and cooperation partners. First, the Hauptstadtkulturfonds, that is the Capital Culture Funds of Berlin, the Riva and David Logan Foundation. We are also part of the New Perspective for Action, that is a project by Reimagine Europe, co-funded by the European Union. And then, thanks to our cooperation with the BMBF project, Swarm Technology, Control of Autonomy in Complex Weapon Systems with Paderborn University, and specifically the project that Utah is coordinating, that is a research network named Meaningful Human Control, Autonomous Weapon Systems between Regulation and Reflection. And for people that don't know what is the BMBF, is the Federal Ministry of Education and Research. Then we also work in cooperation with the Wow Holland Stiftung. I really want to thank them a lot for the very important work they do. And our partner venues are the Kunsttrankreuzberg Bethanien and NGBK. And our media partner, TADS, Global Voices, Untold Magazine, and Il Mitte. And the Untold Magazine has there a table that people can also visit during the breaks, in which they show their publication. There is also one about critical AI. The publications are for sale. And it's very important the work they do, because they have a really critical, important approach to also understand better what is happening in the current war, for example, in Gaza. And then I also would like to say the second table we see there is organized by Support Assange Berlin. They have also been with us many events, and they are speaking specifically on the discourse of the Espionage Act, what does it mean for whistleblowers, in particular the case of Julian Assange, that seems solved but is not completely, because he's still asking for pardon, and so they can also explain you more about that. And there is a petition going on for pardon Julian Assange. They also produce a video that is explaining really well how the discourse of the Espionage Act is suppressing many whistleblowers, and did it in the past. Another big thank is our streaming partner, Boiling Head Media, that they are doing our streaming. And I also want to mention that for the future, although I did a list of funders, as many organizations in Berlin, today there is a big demonstration in front of the Rathaus, because they are cutting enormously the cultural budget of the city and of Germany. We also are risking our extinction, and at the moment we have really trouble in going on with our work. So I also want to mention to all of you here, because we started a fundraising campaign, and it's the moment we really need the support of everyone. And it's also a bit paradoxical, because we are now celebrating our 10 years, but who knows how and if we will go on, so please think about us and also our work. And I want to thank also the audience online and remind them that we will have a chat with Agnès and Mel that is going on, so they can use our chat online on the page of the Disruption Lab of this conference. So if you are following on YouTube, you can go there and ask questions during the panels to ask directly to our speakers questions, doubts, and observations that you have. And now I'm very glad to go into the depth of the program today and announce the first panel, Whistleblowing in Data-Centric Warfare. And I'm extremely happy to have here with us, although one is online but is still with us, Jesselyn Radack, that is the head of the Whistleblower and Source Protection Program, Whisper at ExposeFacts. They also do a very important work in terms of whistleblowing protection, and I have a deep admiration for their work. And Thomas Drake, that is a whistleblower, former senior executive at the National Security Agency. So thank you also, Thomas, for doing this big travel and come here with us. It's also very important for me that you are here today. And this presentation introduces the conference themes by reflecting on the implication and challenges of whistleblowing for the analysis and denouncing of war misconducts. We at the DNL have been fostering always an environment in which whistleblowers could work with researchers, investigative journalists, artists, and human rights defenders to promote accountability and develop research as well. But there are also other organizations. And so, for example, Jesselyn Radack has been a really great experience in supporting and representing many military and national security whistleblowers. And I also want to mention the International Ellsberg Whistleblower Award that was given this October to Daniel Hale. Daniel, also Jesselyn is going to speak probably more about him, is the former National Security Agency intelligence analyst who exposed the high civilian cost of the US drone program in 2014. And because of that, he was almost 3 years in prison, and in February, finally, was able to leave. And this award is also presented by two of our founders, the Riva and David Logan Foundation and also the Wow Holland Foundation, but was done together also with the Tad's Panther Foundation and the Whistleblower Network. And I hope that Annegret Falter is also here with us today. The Whistleblower Award was named after Daniel and Patricia Ellsberg, and as many of you know that Daniel Ellsberg published a secret study by the US Department of Defense in 1971 that was exposing US government lies about the Vietnam War and thus helping to end this war. So this award is very deserved by Daniel, and also very important that carry this name of Daniel Ellsberg. And now I finally am very happy to announce Jesselyn Radack that is connecting with us online. Hello, Jesselyn. Jesselyn Radack heads the Whistleblower and Source Protection Programs at ExposeFacts. She has been at the forefront of challenging the US government's unprecedented war on whistleblowers, which has become a war on journalists. Radack has represented national security employees who have been prosecuted under the Espionage Act, including Daniel Hale, Edward Snowden, Thomas Drake, and John Kiriakou. Radack has testified before the US Congress, European Parliament, Council of Europe, and German's Bundestag. So I'm now very happy to leave the stage to Jesselyn, and I will come back later to introduce Thomas Drake. Thank you, Jesselyn, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Tatiana and Disruption Network Institute and Disruption Network Lab for this very critical and challenging and important and difficult work. Whistleblowing is critical in the context of drone war because we would have no idea what's occurring in the most secret and most lethal government program without the perspective of insiders. Whistleblowers have been on the forefront of revealing information warfare. This generation of war is supposed to be safe for soldiers, precise, and sanitized. But because of whistleblowers, we found out how the government undercounted, minimized, or covered up civilian deaths by categorizing them as collateral damage. You can thank Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange for that revelation. We found out that child victims being dehumanized by calling them terrorists in training. You can thank Brandon Bryant for that disclosure. We also found out about obscure visual technology and that sometimes you can't tell the difference between a shovel and a weapon, between a crawling baby and a dog. And thanks to our client who wants to remain anonymous for exposing that atrocity. We also learned about the inaccuracy of drone strikes. As Tatiana mentioned, 90% of those killed were not the intended target. And we only know about that because of Daniel Hale, who paid the heaviest of prices for exposing that outrageous truth. Because of whistleblowers, we also learned about mistaken drone strikes, like the 2021 Kabul missile strike that killed 10 civilians, 7 of whom were children. And thank you, CENTCOM General Ken McKenzie, for that admission. We also learned about the very blurred line between the military and the CIA. And thank you to Christopher Aaron for that revelation. And finally, we learned about the epidemic PTSD and moral injury suffered by those doing this dark work. Thank you, Lisa Ling and Sean Westmoreland, and all my other clients who have suffered in silence, too often medically untreated. Wartime increases secrecy in government agencies that, by their very nature, run covert operations. And some of that secrecy is understandable. Troop movements, undercover intelligence identities, nuclear design information, I get it. But wartime secrecy has also hidden programs that the public had a right to know about because they were both illegal and unconstitutional. I'm talking about torture, secret domestic surveillance, and war crimes. And finally, drone warfare. All the more so because drone warfare is data-based, network-centric war. Data is the basis of the decision. The paradox is robotic warfare, AI, etc., are supposed to solve the problem of bias and mistakes and dirty hands. AI is a sexy new buzzword, but it's not a saving grace. It's a false prophet that masquerades as a smart, precise, unbiased, foolproof, and clean technology. But humans have to create these algorithms. They have to create the inputs. They still have to make the ultimate call. And I think a human should be in the loop because AI doesn't have judgment or reason or context or a conscience. The price for blowing the whistle in the drone program has been extreme and frightening. At best, whistleblowers get disciplined or demoted. More often, they lose their jobs and usually their entire career because their security clearances are pulled and they end up blacklisted. Most of the drone whistleblowers that I represent have struggled with substance abuse, homelessness, unemployment, broken family relationships, profound moral injury, and suicidal ideation and attempts. The government has tried to deny them disability benefits because they were not boots on the ground, as if you can watch in 12-hour shifts for days, for weeks, for months on end, someone's life, and then extinguish them with the push of a button and not be affected. At the worst end of the spectrum, my clients get investigated and prosecuted, as happened most egregiously to Daniel Hale. The FBI has conducted armed raids of my clients' homes. The government has put Daniel Hale, again, one of the most consequential sources, in prison in a special Kafkaesque communications management unit that was built to house terrorists. And I mention this because Daniel is a peace activist. Tom and Lisa, they have a lot of commonalities. They're both former Air Force. They both witnessed the dark underbelly of some of the government's most closely held programs. Tom was a senior executive at the NSA who disclosed the birth of secret domestic surveillance. He tried to go through multiple internal channels to report it. He went to his supervisor. He went to the NSA Inspector General and the Intelligence Community Inspector General and the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. And not only did these channels fail to redress his grievances, they instead turned the sights on Tom and made him a target in the first Espionage Act prosecution of a whistleblower since Daniel Ellsberg. He faced life in prison with no ability to raise a defense because the Espionage Act is a strict liability law that has no public interest defense. Lisa was a technician in the drone program who executed the so-called war on terror from her home state of California. She was awarded and rewarded for the completion of over 121,000 targets, people who were maimed or killed. She came to understand that drones were inflicting terror on an entire population and not on our enemies. She called out the reality that drones evolved from an unarmed and life-saving troop-protecting platform to offensive killing machines secretly terrorizing civilians who had no avenue of escape. She also understood that drones were creating more enemies than they killed by inflicting intergenerational fear and hatred, which can only lead to more terrorism. Finally, she knew drones were unnecessary because technology already existed to deploy laser-guided missiles in areas of conflict that are far more effective for troop protection without firing them from a remote control flying robot. Most whistleblowers are so ruined by what they experience that they bury that part of their lives. Tom and Lisa have both bravely refused to be silenced about their knowledge and the attendant risks of speaking up. They have also generously shepherded other whistleblowers like Daniel Hale, who were going through retaliation that was similar to what they experienced. And most importantly, they have continued to speak out around the globe about these issues. And they have done this tireless, thankless, risky work in service of truth and accountability, without which we can't have real freedom. Being a whistleblower is on no one's bucket list. They have my enduring respect for not only telling the truth, but continuing to tell it over and over and over again. And it becomes harder and harder to do, which makes it even more important and critical that we do so. So we are very fortunate to have their voices and their wisdom and integrity and fortitude here today. And thank you, Tanya, for making this happen. Thank you.
So also a big thank from my side to Jesselyn Radack, and of course to all the whistleblowers that she mentioned that made this happen. Also the topics we are speaking about today, we really give a lot to them to be able to bring this discourse also to an audience, because thanks to them we know more. And I'm very pleased now to invite on stage Thomas Drake. Thomas Drake is a former senior executive at the National Security Agency, as it was already announced by Jesselyn Radack, but I also wanted to give a proper welcome. He blew the whistle of 9/11 intelligence failures, massive multi-billion frauds, waste and abuse, as well as a secret mass surveillance regime authorized by President Bush that violated the Constitution. The latter resulted in Drake indicted under the Espionage Act, so facing decades in prison, and he went free in a plea deal. He also served in the Air Force and as a commissioned intelligence officer in the Navy for 15 years, and shortly as an intelligence analyst at the CIA. He has dedicated the rest of his life to defending our rights and personal privacy. And thank you so much, Thomas. I invite you here on stage also for the great work you did as part of the advisory board of the Disruption Network Institute. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Und guten Nachmittag, meine Damen und Herren. To start off, I just want to share a little bit of story because I haven't done this in a while, and I've been through a few things in the last couple of years. The last time I was scheduled to speak internationally was at a cybersecurity conference in Australia back in 2019, right before COVID. However, I was crudely censored and unable to speak at the conference. I am happy to announce that I did not have that problem when I showed up here in Berlin. And all they did was stamp my passport and let me through. So obviously the German state government is not too concerned about what I might say or not say, given I am here. The other thing I want to address is people are probably wondering, what the heck is going on in America? Yeah, 5 November. Speaking about an interesting day in US history. All I can say is that Trump is back. It's Trump 2.0 that's back. And this time he gets to have a do-over. A second chance to get it all right again. Oh, maybe. My prediction for the next 4 years, there's a lot I could say about that election, but my prediction, strap in and get ready for a very bumpy, high-wire, inverted roller coaster ride in America flying upside down that will reverberate throughout the world. It is true, he's not yet president. We still have President Biden, but he is the elect. And he was democratically elected. Maybe next time America has a presidential election, they should vote for an AI-generated president to lead the US. So with those opening remarks, let me get to sort of the central topics and themes from my perspective. One, why whistleblowing is important, and then address some of the issues that are surrounding autonomous weapons and AI. In terms of whistleblowing, I find myself once again exercising my own agency, even at this very conference, to publicly warn the world as a whistleblower about the threats that AI presents to us. But of course, here I am saying, yes, once again, as a whistleblower, I did not choose whistleblowing as a career. Believe me, it was not in my high school career book or guidance counselor saying, hey, Tom, how would you like to be a whistleblower when you grow up? No. If the choice of career when growing up is selecting a good paying profession with stability, reputation, maybe a little bit of influence, money, or even power, the last thing you're going to choose is the career of whistleblower. And yes, I did blow the whistle in the public interest, as you've already heard. I did so in the public interest, but guess where I used to work? At the National Security Agency. So it presents a rather interesting conundrum when you're in a super secret agency and you find out something about your own government. Not only is it violating the Constitution, but this might be something the public would have an interest in. What did I get for it? Well, you already heard. It took a number of years for them to, quote unquote, indict me, 10 felony counts, but I was actually facing essentially the rest of my life in prison. Why is that the case? All I did was call out crimes that were committed by the state. And yet, the government chose to treat me as a criminal because they regarded that what I did was actually a crime against the state. Think about, again, the contradiction. I found myself defending the very Constitution that I had taken an oath, the US Constitution, that I had taken a sacred oath to support and defend 5 times in my government and military career. I found myself defending that same Constitution against my own government. Extraordinarily challenging when you decide you're going to basically upend your entire career and exercise moral agency and blow the whistle. What most people don't realize, you heard a little bit from Jesselyn, is the impact on your life is extraordinary. The price that a whistleblower pays is incredibly high. I came this close to ending up in prison. So I have an incredibly deep sense of what it means to be free. And you'll probably hear it in my voice right now to say that what it means to be free means everything to me. Because they came within an ace of taking that away. I was brought to the brink of bankruptcy. I was declared indigent by a federal court. I went heavily into debt. My life was completely upended, both professionally and personally. I have no pension or retirement. And for the past couple of years, and probably in part as a result, and I'll just share this personally, I've suffered dealing with stage 4 cancer. And a rather rare form of that as well. But I did become a moral rebel. Because for me, I could not remain silent with what was going on inside the government. And so what I really committed were conscientious and intentional acts of radical transparency. Whistleblowing disclosures, as you heard from Jesselyn, but especially during an environment which is characterized by war and conflict, can easily get crossways with official state secrets and restrictions, particularly for those who disclose to the press. So why are we here? Besides holding up AI to its own mirror, I will also have a few warnings as a duty to expose and warn in the public interest. First, AI is not AI. I'm going to say it again. AI is not AI. There is nothing artificial about our intelligence unless you wish to cede our intelligence to AI. I used to work in the early days of AI, back in the 1980s. There was really expert systems based on patterns and the beginning stages of large language models, sucking in more and more data. But the danger is not that AI will actually malfunction. The danger is that it will actually work exactly as advertised and as intended. I could, at this point, engage you in an extended discussion about Isaac Asimov's 3 laws as applied to robots, but other than referencing the Solarian rebels, to look it up if you haven't read his book, which poses an ethical dilemma where are you allowed, think of AI, to harm non-Solarian human beings? Guess what? They end up being specifically programmed to do so. I shudder. AI mimics human nature, front and center. It'll supercharge any system that uses data, but it could also trigger the worst possible scenarios you want to envision. We are now engaged, I must say this as clear as I can, engaged in the emerging reality of 5th generation warfare that involves cyber weapons and information warfare. And there is ongoing, right now as we speak, a massive AI and autonomous weapons arms race. The so-called training runs for the LLMs cost tens and tens of millions on a single run when they have access to massive amounts of data. Running on all those chips you hear about, like, well, why is NVIDIA stock so high? But when you add more data, computing power, and training time, you supposedly produce better AI models. I'm going to disagree. The data of the person, interestingly enough, becomes more valuable than the person. Call it the mass datafication of humanity. Even to play in this game, you need to have huge amounts of money behind you. We're talking to do it right, in terms of even sort of initial threshold level, $1 billion, $1 billion. And yet the real frontier of AI is not just the data, but connecting to the very structures underneath that generate that data. And this is where the old GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, comes into play. AI, all AI does is increase the scale and the scope of this. A couple other things to say about this. Apple, I used to work at Apple, their researchers looked at some 20 AI systems to quote unquote solve a simple arithmetic word problem any school kid can solve. They all failed. Look it up. Very interesting. Look it up. They failed. They failed because they had no context for what was behind the word problem. It's not about more data. It really isn't. It turns out that there are huge ethical issues with AI as well. I will just use this phrase. There are clear regressive stereotypes built into the AI algorithms that reflect who we are in our human culture and in our biases. I don't want AI to automate my life. I want to have and live an actual life, to say it simply. So what future do we face? AI is increasingly active in many of the warfare systems that exist today, especially on this frontier of AI. And there are huge dangers in letting AI run amok, especially when it's allowed to expand the killing fields. As you will hear, AI gives fire and forget a whole new meaning. This reminds me at NSA, I would hear a familiar refrain. We track them, you whack them, which became the operative phrase. AI also shortens sensor to shooter time, therefore increases the kill ratio / murder ratio. Surveillance provides the data for AI and the infrastructure as well. So AI is actually the narrative, just listen real closely here, AI is the narrative, not the technology. And it becomes a nervous system for our war-making systems. Here's the other thing about AI, especially when it's built into platforms. How does an AI engine or an AI algorithm face a war crime? If you have all this encoded in black boxes, what law applies? Does an AI embedded platform or infused platform have moral agency? Are we facing our own Oppenheimer moment? I am actually suggesting we might be, but we're going to build it anyways. The fact that it's being used is crystal clear. There's no issue about it not being used. It's the degree to which it will be used. Did you know they're actually developing micro drones? 3 grams of an explosive powder? Basically just autonomous assassination bots being developed as we speak. So to me, there's a 5-alarm fire going off with AI. Is it already out of control? Can it be contained? The winner in this AI race could determine humanity's fate. Go take a look at OpenAI's approach. Go take a look at Anthropic's approach. One of them just wants to be first. The other one claims that they want to be safe. Is it possible? So what happens when AI runs out of data? They're already noticing, especially in advanced AGI, the general intelligence, what happens when AI begins to run out of data? They're already seeing that AI begins to, quote unquote, learn from itself. Now that makes it truly autonomous. Once again, we're faced with Pandora's box, like I did some years ago, and all these AI furies are escaping out of them. So, what is there a real need of having? We need to gather the very best of the experts, some who are at this conference, across multiple disciplines. They get the risks and the dangers of AI, work on passing policies wherever possible, building in the tech necessary to control it where possible that rejects indiscriminate surveillance, centralized control, and limits the damage and harm to humanity. The stakes are just that much higher in my estimation these days, especially when disclosing critical information in the public interest on autonomous weapons, on information warfare, on AI. And that's why this need must include a much larger community, a diverse, expanded community of not just whistleblowers, but also activists and lawyers and journalists and open source researchers, plus labs and institutes to go in depth with actionable studies and publications. So you're all in for a treat today and tomorrow, with research fellows sharing their findings and experiences, panel discussions, and in how to deal with and show the realities of autonomous warfare, including the horror and tragedy that we're seeing and have seen unfold in the Middle East. Things to think about while you're here at this conference for the next 2 days. Thank you.
So I want to thank you, Thomas Drake, for this very important speech. Also very important to start the conference together with you and Jesselyn Radack. And I'm now introducing what is happening next, the lecture performance by Joanna Moll.